Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to cross stitch a leather wrap around a round device such as a lantern handle. I don't currently have a lantern handle with me, however I do have this nice round bar that is the same diameter, and I actually use that to space and measure for my handles for my lanterns. So this piece right here, at a distance it looks like it's not pre-punched, and my camera's having a hard time focusing here, but we use a lacing chisel with these, or a prong punch, and they're just really narrow slits, and sometimes you can see them a little bit better on the back side. There you go. But the first thing we're going to do to get started on this is grab our thread that was included with your kit and your number 10 harness stitching needle. We're going to put one on each end here, and so I've got the end of the thread and the needle, and what I like to do to prep this is take my fingernail and kind of rub it up against the end of that tip there, and what that does is get some excess wax off the tip. Pardon my gnarled old mangled hands. And then I like to twist it up a little bit just so it goes through the needle a little better, kind of pointed on the end. So then I'm just going to take and thread the needle. Sometimes you gotta flatten it out a little bit. Should just go right through there. Pull it out like so, and I pull it out maybe a finger length worth there, and then I'm going to take the tip, go back over, so I've got the long end of the thread here, and I'm going to take and poke through the threads, the small threads that make up this larger thread, like so. And then I'm going to do that one more time. What this does is prevent the thread from coming out of the needle while we're working, which is really annoying. So I'm going to slide that down the needle. You can see it's all bunched up there. That's just fine. Just grab hold of the tail end, the little short end here, and pull, and then grab the long end, and you can see that it pops onto the thread like that, and then you can lay your tail over nice and smooth just like this. So you should see the little double perforation there where we went through the thread, and if you give this a tug, it's not going to come off of the needle. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, let my camera focus here. So you can see my round bar here. I'm going to go ahead and get this other end with the needle on it, same way. Just going to thread that up real quick. This thread's some really good heavy duty thread, and these needles fit it just right, so it might take you a second or two to get her threaded up here. And if you start like this one, it didn't get all the threads through in the first one. If you just take and twist it up a little bit more, it should narrow up enough to go through that needle just fine. There we go. Same deal here. I just lay it on my index finger. These needles are not sharp as in like a sewing needle for fabric. They're not going to just puncture your skin, so you can kind of poke your skin with it a little bit and it's not going to hurt you. Don't get too carried away though. Alright, so you can see there we got that one done as well. And now looking at our rod here, this is our lantern handle, pretend. Alright, so I'm just going to lay it underneath just like that. Obviously a lantern handle is round, so it's a little bit more difficult to do, but this is the same process. The trick with the lantern handle is you just want to make sure that you're centered on the arch of the bail, so just make sure that you're keeping track of that. Alright, so on this guy we're going to just start, try to get this up a little closer to the camera here, and so I'm just going to take one needle. I got them both currently held in my hand. I'm going to take one needle and poke through one side. You can see that hole opened up, right? It's kind of hard to see those little slits, but if you look at them close, just poke your needle through and they'll open right up. And then I'm going to run this needle straight, same needle that I'm using here. I'll just use one to clarify. So I've got the same needle that I poked there. I'm going to go through to the other side. And you can do this off of the ring too, but on your bail, if you can't remove it, then you need to do this on place. So I'm demonstrating here, going over it. But if you can remove the bail, it's actually a little bit easier. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's not all that hard. So I'm going to run this out here, and I'm going to take and even up my thread lengths on each side. So I'm going to take my needles, put them together, and I'm going to pull them away from me, pulling that thread nice and even. And then I'm going to come back down with my needles here, and you can see how we're getting ready to start. The trick with this is that you want to repeat the same movements each time, and I'm about to clarify that. So I'm going to start with right first, and some people like to stitch towards them, so you could flip it around this way like so. I'm just going to do it like this for clarity of the video. I think it would be a little easier for me to show you without my hands being in the way. So here's the deal. You can go to the next left side. We're going to be cross stitching, so we're going to be going back and forth each side, and we're going to be kind of making a little bit of an X pattern with this. You could certainly just take your needle and you could do a whip stitch where you're just stitching all the way around like that, kind of like a suture stitch. But we're going to do a little cross stitch because I think it looks a little cooler on those old traditional Coleman bales. So first thing you're going to do, go across from the right to the left, and I'm going to go over, right, not inside. I'm going to go to the outside here and poke through that slot. Just remember, whatever you do here, it doesn't really matter other than the fact that you need to keep the movements the same. So you can see here, I now have this strand crossing over. I'm going to do the same, but opposite, I guess, with the other side. But I'm going to go to the outside, just like I did with the other side. And you can see how this is going to start forming an X once we cinch this down. And sometimes you just got to kind of play with it a little bit to get it lined up just right. And you can see how that meets together real nice. If you pull that even tighter, you can get the leather to meet right up against itself. But we've got a nice little X shape there. And this just takes a little bit of time. And with those bale wraps, they're pretty long, so make sure that you're sticking to it and paying attention to it. It's one thing that's really easy to mess up. We have found if you're sitting there watching TV doing this or something, and instead of going over with one, you go, on the inside instead of going on the outside, and that's going to mess up the look. If you want it to look perfect and really have a nice pop to the eye, you don't want it to look any different than this very first stitch. So they all need to be the same. And you can see on this little section of leather I've got, which is only probably 6 inches long, I've got, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 holes to stitch. So you can see how it can be an issue if you mess it up. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is take our right needle and go around the outside, just like so, keeping it the exact same pattern each and every time. Okay, and then we're going to take this left side, go over to the right side, go around the outside, through the hole back to the middle. Now, like I said, you can do a wrap where you go to the inside of the leather on the interior here versus the exterior. Just do it the same on every one. I personally prefer going to the exterior like this because you can see it really makes that round, right? If you go through the inside, sometimes these little center pieces, they kind of bow up a little bit on you, and it doesn't look quite as good. And so that's the start of the process. And if you look here, I'll try to zoom in and get my light not bothering me. So you can see here is the pattern. All right, so we've got this strand right here. It's going under that strand, and that repeats on this next one. See how it's coming up from underneath that strand, the left-hand side thread there. All right, so we're going to do that all the way down. Now I'm going to time-lapse this so that you don't have to just bear me talking and all that jazz here. So let me get that started for you, and then I'll show you how to end it. One thing you can do here too is if you don't like quite how tight it is, or if there's a section that's looser, this is a lacing fid, but anything like a little pointed screwdriver would work, probably a Phillips screwdriver or fine tip, a fork tine, they all work just fine. Just something you can snag some of that and pull it tighter. If you like it to look a little tighter, just get in there and grab you a thread and kind of pull up on it and just work that thread all the way back around. It's easier to do if you catch it early, but it's fixable regardless. So one thing too, you'll notice sometimes your thread the whole thing will start to twist like that, and all you got to do is just twist it back straight. Be pretty easy to straighten up. And you can see there in the time lapse, if you look close, that I actually messed up a couple times, and it really wasn't that difficult to go around. But if you find that you mess up, it's okay to run that needle back through the same hole and undo a stitch as well. So don't be afraid to do that. I'm going to end it right here because this is actually just an extendable fork that we have for, s'mores and stuff like that around the campfire, and I didn't slide it all the way down before I got started up there. So I'm just going to show you how to end it right here, and that way you'll have the process down and you'll understand exactly what to do here. Now when you get to the end, of course, you can cut your needles off just fine, but all you do for this, I like to leave the needles on for a little while longer, but some people don't want those on while they're tying the knot. That's okay. I'm just going to tie a normal 1/2 inch knot, like so, and pull it good and tight, and then I'm going to do the same with this other one. One more hitch, pull it tight, and then I like personally, unless you just want the threads to be kind of hanging off on the end, I like to take and run both needles together up underneath and out. Sometimes you can't get both of them in there depending on how tight you stitched it. I like to go up to about there, just one stitch, one cross. I go up, and then that'll allow you to tuck your threads up in there. Sometimes you got to use some pliers to get them up in there too, but pull that up and through and lock it down. And if you get any of this wax build up, just take you something pointed. Pocket knife works, just don't cut them. Dull pocket knife, there you go. And then run your other needle up through there. But sometimes if you run them up through like this, they're going to last a little longer. They're not going to wear down as quick. Those ends won't catch on anything. And they're also hidden too. You don't have any of those little ends hanging out at the end of your stitch. It looks pretty clean when you get it all done. And so I just ran those backwards and give them a pull. And then take some scissors or a pocket knife or something and just trim them off right where you want them. And you can see you got a nice little ending. It's got a little bit of wax in there I need to dig out to make it look a little bit cleaner, but you can see you got a nice end. There's no like tassels hanging out past the bottom. So that's how I do my cross stitch on my lantern handles. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.